All right. Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
Please confirm if you can see me and if you can see my slide.
Yes, we can see you and we can see your slide. Thanks.
All right. It's always a pleasure to be in your midst anytime I'm called upon on this platform because Data Science Nigeria is the building block of my skill set and my expertise in the world, my announcements and everything. And I want to thank the CEO and the visionary of Data Science Nigeria for conceiving this and giving birth to many of us in the industry. I practically knew nothing about data until I came in contact with DSN, and the and the rest became history. So I want to appreciate everyone and also to encourage everyone that is on this call this afternoon to know that it is possible for you to get to that height, get to that position that you intend to be in future through this platform. So today we'll be looking at social economic impacts of AI and bridging the digital divide and empowering communities. You see, when we talk about socioeconomic impact, we refer to all those business activities that are not only driven by strong social mission, but also intended to become economic viable. So it's an interesting section this afternoon where we also explore the EU Act because yesterday we are looking at return on investment of spatial data analysis. Prior to that, we looked at Microsoft Fabrics, and I believe you've been desiring in your mind as to what you are going to do after here because you need to take the knowledge that you've gotten from this section into the real industry. And for it, depending on your level, if you are yet to build yourself, then you take the knowledge and start building yourself. I remember one of those days we were trying to get into the boot camp. So I and my friend then, Ayo, we were reading, studying, trying to get into the boot camp because getting into the boot camp requires 100 or 50 days exercise and tax. So we're reading back to back. So sometimes we sleep in the office to get into that industry. Now we then expired in the boot camp, and I remember when they were playing the video or the advert, I saw myself in the picture in those early days, and yeah, it's interesting to reflect on all of those things because ideas came into existence. We started building ourselves in different AI skills and tools, and we eventually grew into it, and we are still growing into it and making impact in our environment. So you need to really understand what the current trend is. We are also going to look at the EU acts, look at how will that affect the dream which you've conceived sitting there at the moment, and we look at some of the concerns and how and we'll answer the question if it's going to create more digital divide between you and the AI playmakers, or is it going to kind of breach that gap at the end? All right. So I've done a little bit of introduction, but I mean, the question now is not if the question now is not if AI will affect businesses. The question now is how much will AI affect businesses? All right. The question now is how much will AI affect businesses? And you see that in before we even look at how much AI will affect, let's look at what machine learning is. And if you look at different concepts or definition of machine learning or AI, sorry, definition of AI, you see that it keeps changing from time to time, and but they still mean the same thing. So AI currently is machines performing human-like cognitive tasks. And what are those human-like cognitive tasks? I'm not sure where my screen is. Okay, so what are those human cognitive tasks? We have the learning, we have the understanding, we have the reasoning, we have the interacting. So any form of human-like cognitive tasks that you can think of is, is what AI stands for at the moment. And you could be asking, is AI creative? You could be asking, can AI predict or can AI dictate our emotions and our pattern? And the most important thing I want to let you know is that a lot of things are being developed and AI is growing fast. If you have actually looked into, watched the documentary by AlphaGo, and learned how the AlphaGo AI system was built, you discover in the process of playing with human, one of the top experts in the game, there was this particular move that AI system made. They call it the 10,000 moves, and even the developers were kind of asking, how did this move happen? I mean, because it was not part of what they envisaged, but at the same time, it's still a question that needs to be answered. Now, if AI can read emotions, yes, AI researchers are ongoing. You may want to Google it and see a lot of things. I mean, it's gradually building, and the social economic space is getting bigger. Now, but the productivity or the impact of AI will be driven by one, the productivity gain from businesses in automating processes. And that's the reason why one of the sections, either yesterday or day before, talked about how to use Microsoft Fabrics. You've been hearing about Power Platform apps. You've been hearing about so many AI tools that doesn't require coding or requires little of coding. And this is how the impact will be so great, or the impact is. So what we are now looking at is how much will this AI then affect the businesses. Aside from that, you are going to also see an increase in consumer demand resulting from the availability of personalized products. I think one of us designed, and many of us have been using Power Apps and using Microsoft Fabrics and other machine learning codes to design so many instances or so many insights within the industry. And it goes beyond that. So from that PwC chart analysis that you see there, you see that the economic gain from AI will be experienced by all sector, right? It will be experienced by all sector and all industry. And at least there is expected to be at least a GDP approximate of 10% by 2030. So that is how it's going to affect the businesses. But again, let's look at there different sectors that will be impacted, which we've talked about: the health and educational sector, the retail, also the transport, logistic. In fact, every sector will actually benefit from AI. But what is digital divide in technology? We can agree that AI is a technology, or is part of technology itself. So, what is the digital technology all about, and what is digital divide? Digital divide is more like, how will I even put it? Okay, so digital divide is a comparison of people who have access and who doesn't have access to digital technology. So it cuts across internet, it cuts across computers, it cuts across mobile devices and the likes of them. And you can see how DSN Nigeria is gradually trying to bridge that digital divide that we have in the ecosystem. I was one of the beneficiaries of the AI high drive, where thousands of learning were imported in AI in a terabyte disk and distributed to DSN members. In fact, at the moment, I still have cause to reference to some of the materials that are in the hard drive, and it benefits a whole lot. It cuts across. I mean, you can also see how learning is being done via XMS and via text message. So these are innovative strategy trying to make those people in the rural area who doesn't have access to normal, or who doesn't have access to education in the field of AI, to benefit and to learn more. But in all of this, yes, it's actually breeding that. But a good definition of it is that is the gap between individuals who have access to modern information and communication technology. We could see during from 2019 onwards, the rate of internet users increased. I mean, informations are everywhere online, and it's transforming even the media space, in the sense that a time will come where we may not even need reporters in different parts of the world. All right, we may not need analysts or reporters within the media, or the people we call the mass communicators. We may not need them in different parts of the world representing great brands. If you need an information, you just need to look for someone within your social network within that area, get the information you want, and drive and report it on the media. So it's gradually affecting businesses. So because access to information is broadened, majority of the people are now on the internet, and digital footprints are being created. You see, lessons, schools, all of and all of those such are now, and even companies are adopting. They're currently adopting hybrid form of working, where you work few days in the office and few days at home. So the lockdown actually increased that within the sector. And another definition about this is how technology is being used and who gets to benefit from it. So these three definitions makes up the digital divide. And appreciably, we could say that yes, there is a great increase, or there is a great impact that the technology has actually breached that digital divide, because more people are having access to it. But can we really say that the digital divide is completely breached? No, because when you look at these statistics here, you can see that we have 7.91 billion people on the planet Earth, and for unique mobile phone users, 5.3 billion, then internet users, 4.95 billion. That's a huge number. And you see that 1/3 of the world population do not own a mobile device, because if you look at the people that use this mobile device, 5.3 billion out of it, you see that it's that 7.5% of the global population still don't have internet at the moment, which is a great number. All right. So but before then, before 2019, the statistics reads that, as at 2017 rather, the statistics reads that 50% of the global population have no internet. So somehow the pandemic was a blessing in disguise, in trying to breach that digital divide. Internet facilities, internet communications, access to information becoming online, and that actually grew that information. And the graph on the right hand side, we show you the January, the years from the years and the month in January, how the increase occurred, and you could see that there is a growth within that time. All these things are very important for us to understand. But in driving deeper, you see that in providing access to information technology, not everyone at the moment still have access to it. So while you are seated here conceiving different ideas, conceiving different ideas, what you are going to develop, how you are going to help the market, how you are going to help sub-Saharan Africa, how you are going to help DSN, how you are going to help your community, you need to start looking at those products, AI products that you are going to build with different platforms or different AI products. How will this try to also add significantly in bridging the digital divide? But again, we are going to also x-ray that the AI technology can either exacerbate the digital divide, or bridge it together, or bridge the digital divide. Now, you see some people saying the digital divide is kind of binary in nature. But with the advent of AI, you see that the new classes of technology, access, and connectivity itself, right? The experience people are having in that regard is leading to, or are leading to, a range of different digital inclusion and exclusion. Of course, within Nigerian sector, you could see that we are now having more of digital financial inclusion of different apps like OPay and the likes of them, trying to make that average person in the rural area being able to have access to finance, also have access to internet and the likes of them. But there's still a whole lot to go, and there's still a road to go. Now let's look at the multi-dimension of digital divides. I'm not sure I'm looking at. Okay, I was just looking at the charts. Well, we'll come to question and answer. So one is access. I mean, you are privileged to be in the hall, and you are privileged to be in this hall, and I want to appreciate you for taking out that courage to pass through all the requirements that is part of the prerequisite for you to be in this conference. But again, you can see that so many people actually wanted to be there, but they couldn't either have a laptop to access, or to participate in the hackathon, or to even tune in as it was made open. So access still becomes an issue even within the 21st century. And in Nigeria, I started hearing about is it Elon Musk trying to bring in internet and the likes of them, and that's cascade down to Africa, and not just in Africa, but different parts of the world. That even in the in the developed country, there are some areas. I mean, I'm not going to call so that there are some places that I visited. I discovered that even to have to make mobile calls is kind of difficult. And I start asking myself, I mean, maybe you would have asked yourself, is this 3G, is this 5G and 6G actually a scam? Because when we don't have 5G and 4G, we could download informations from 3G. I mean, you could go to Google and you download information with 3G. But now with 5G, once your phone downgrades to 2G or 3G, it becomes difficult. As we speak now, there are some areas within Europe that still don't have access to 4G, talk more of 5G. So access becomes an issue within the digital space. Another what they call it, another challenge is affordability. Not everyone can afford high-tech device to implement machine learning algorithm. Not everyone can afford it in that sense. I mean, yes, we have cloud services where you can easily use your laptop as more like a virtualization platform to access cloud services like Google Colabs and the likes of them to run Jupyter Notebook. But the gap is still there between who can afford it and who cannot afford it. If you start working with big data, you know that the Google Colab that you are working with cannot carry the volume and enormous amount of data that you want to work with. You need to go for a premium version of Google Colab. So there is a premium version of Google Colab, and not everyone at the moment can still afford it. Age. Okay, come to think of it. I mean, if you're fortunate to have your your grandparents still alive, you see that they use phone. I mean, if you want to reach to them, to speak to them, you reach them via phone. But not all of them still have access to phone or still know how to use phone. So it still boils down that there is also a digital divide that comes within age, as it is, as older people are generally using ICT, to a lesser extent. Then we look at bandwidth, or we can look at contents. You see that relevant contents in local languages are important to stimulate and adopt, and that's why one of our DSN member is gradually driving AI in Yoruba language and driving AI in different, I mean, AI content in different language. And we need more of this because the Europeans cannot come and develop an algorithm or cannot come and develop a language system that will understand your dialect within Africa or within where you are sitting. So it's very important for us to understand the multi-dimension of digital divide. Now, different countries in their different dialects are actually building that. Now, content differs. So it becomes that part that we need to understand, that there is still a digital divide that exists between that. Then disability. I mean, in some places in some places in Europe, one of the requirements for you to even establish a building or establish a company is that you must give access to disabled individuals. You must give access to them. Even when you see some parts of some roads in Europe, they give access to them. They can walk on their wheelchair. But in some parts of Africa, and is also in some parts of the world, such access is not there. But we are looking at the digital space. DSN is also partnering with different companies in order to create that learning opportunity for those who are disabled to participate and get themselves involved in the digital field. So different organizations, not just DSN, are also looking at how to bridge that digital divide that we have. Then the educational sector, of course, we woke. As we woke up in 2023. I mean, ending of 2022, to see the advent of generative AI. And generative AI is more like it's an AI that comes with that has the ability to generate content. You could see that this is different from the generative AI that we have then, where we are being taught how to, of course, then deep learning. When you pick up most of the books on deep learning, what you'll be seeing is cat and dog. So it has grown beyond cat and dog to see that the generative AI can generate content. And the fact about it is that when the large language model was trained, it was not trained for a specific task, but then you can now see how it's being transformed in different sectors in education. From there, people are plugging different concepts and algorithms to derive tools that are good in AI research, and higher institutions at the moment are adopting AI. And by next year, some schools in Europe will start using AI to teach in the institutions. Now, the question is, if you cannot, if of course, well, some universities in Nigeria can afford to employ such robotic AI to teach their students, but we still have some side down or downtime to it, or side effect of it within the educational sector. But you can see that what takes you an hour to proofread articles, or if you are in the research space trying to build a topic modeling on papers, you see that with some tools in AI, that tool can in short while analyze the paper and give you insight. Then you make your decision if you are to take this journal article for whatever research you want to do. So within the AI sector or within the research world, you could see that, or within the educational sector, AI is actually creating great impact or making great impact in the educational sector. But not everybody can afford it. Just imagine if ChatGPT happens to be a premium version, although we have ChatGPT in premium version. So is it everyone that can afford the premium version of the chat GPT? And there's some content or questions or things that you want to work with the free version. It will tell you that I'm only trained as of so year. So when you then get into the premium version, you see that there is a big difference between the two. But again, having the free version is part of, or is one of the ways of bridging that digital divide. But in general, in the educational sector, we are seeing a great impact within that. Gender, we are seeing more of female coming into the digital technology space, unlike when you have more of CEOs, top CEOs, over 50. I think there was a report that said um, 30% of the CEOs are male, but you could see that right now we are having more of females within the digital space. Migration is also one of the multi dimensions of digital divide. Then locations as well. Some of us, I know a few people who are currently in Nigeria, but they are working with multinational companies outside Nigeria. So location is no longer a problem, where you can easily submit your CV, get the information, get the job that you're looking for, and you move on. So all of these things are how the multi-dimension of digital divide creates the mobility. And all of this source came from United Nations document, page 34. Now, the question is there a digital divide in Africa? Is there a digital divide in Africa? Is it everyone? Of course, from what I've said, you could see that yes, there is a big digital divide, which DSN is equipping us in to bridge this digital divide and to also place us on the world map. Let's look at gender, for example. We categorize it from the world sector and we compare it to Africa, because DSN is one of the top AI driven institution in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, we could see from the percentage that we have in gender, the map is so clear that Africa needs to do more in order to bridge that digital divide. Even within the youth, the age brackets of people who have access to digital divide, and this report is as of this year. So we could see the urban and the rural area as well. Well, we could say that in the urban sector, we could see there is an increase within Africa in terms of AI, but there is a big gap in Africa between the rural and the urban in this regard. And all of these things are driving it. Now, where you are sitting, you need to start thinking, how can this digital divide be bridged within the environment where you are? And the next thing we want to look at is how we want to look at the bright side of this digital divide. One is the digital infrastructure, access to AI, connectivity increase, data repository. I was listening to yesterday's event and I could see some of the modelings that have been done in geospatial analysis within the northern part of Nigeria and also in Nigeria in general. And I started asking myself, wow, so it seems that we are now gradually coming into that phase where anyone that wants to run a research will have access to data, model data, and generate insight that will drive this and create socioeconomic impact. Then there was a project DSN did data funding or dot com that was handled by Ayo, one of us in DSN, where people go to different shops, snaps prices, and we compare it to see how those prices relate at different shops within Nigeria. Which that project was actually championed by DSN. So with such, we could see that that is one of the brighter side of DSN, access to all of these things. But the infrastructure is still a big thing, because if you are an entrepreneur and you are trying to run an AI company, it's always it can be a daunting task, because when you look at the infrastructure that you need, it becomes difficult. Now, digital savvy workforce, you could see one example is the different global talent initiative that different countries of the world are implementing for those who are digitally sound in the technology space. I mean, that's something to embrace, and it creates that interaction within AI technology. So these are the bright side of it. It's no longer the setting where you have to be among, or you have to be from one certain location or tribe or region before you can have access to it. Though we are not saying that such does not exist, but it is gradually decreasing in number. Once you are technically sound, make your application. In fact, companies, you can see companies, multinational companies in Europe coming to Africa to buy some of their services and products that are being generated by Nigerians and also Ghanaians in the AI tech space. So the digital savvy workforce is actually increasing, and the digital divide is decreasing. Now, the digital platform that offers products and services through digital channels, which we've talked about. I've talked about financial inclusion, which is gradually driving in the likes of OPay and the likes of them. Then digital entrepreneurship in Ghana, as at last year, they had a high increase of entrepreneurs in the AI space and AI and digital space. And that is part of what we want to do. And what is innovation? Innovation is not doing something new, but innovation is doing something that is already existing, but in a different way. So this is part of what the digital and AI is trying to bridge, trying to create that entrepreneurship and innovation within people. But we could see the bias as well. So this bias can be in one way kind of increasing the digital divide, and at the same time reducing the digital divide. With the access of data that we have now, you can see that your data will not be trained with one type of data type, because even historic data tends to contain cultural and beliefs that may actually affect an algorithm. And we can now see the metaverse that's being championed by Meta, that's Facebook. So all of these things are the bright side of digital divide. And we look at it closely, we could see that we are going to look at the digital divide and the AI regulations. I mean, I have personal concerns, which we are going to look at in the discussion sections when we come to the discussion segment on this. But you need to be aware of this AI regulation, because the world organizations or leaders are going to draft their template from this AI EU regulation. Of course, UK are currently they've currently drafted their own AI regulation, and unlike other countries of the world. But you could see that we have our dependency to a certain level when it comes to digital technology or AI with these European countries. And that's why we need to understand what this law is all about. How is this going to create digital divide, increase or decrease within our space, so as you driving that intelligence or building the AI product will understand it, because ignorance is not an excuse as it is. The advent of generative AI, and we don't know what will wake us up in 2024. We don't know the nature of AI that will wake us up in 2024. And you've already heard the news about the AI race, companies trying to create different segments, trying to become a world power. And of course, in different parts of Asia, you could see that some of them are actually driving that digital technology, but it's not being seen in the news. Some of the countries in Asia as well, they have their own digital platform, which is not open to the world as it is. So how will this affect Africa in general? How will it affect that idea that you've conceived, that idea that is going to be the new wave that will drive the vision of DSN, and as well impact Africa as a whole and the world in general? Now, this AI regulation, or the legislation, was established to govern the development, promotion, and utilization of AI within Europe. But like I said, it's going to be a template that different individuals or the world body are going to adopt in driving in driving different policies that they are going to have. Now you can see that the act drives heavily on oh sorry, I think I was so fast. All right, so the act drives heavily on model of certification of self-product. But let me say this, all right? The purpose of this, the emphasis of the AI regulation or the EU Act is to improve or to fortify the regulation concerning data quality, which has always been a concern within the digital technology space. So it also boils down to transparency. Now, human oversight, you have to be careful when you are designing your AI product, because there are unintended consequences that your product may derive in the market, which is an oversight. But this law will try to help you to guide it and also create accountability. Now, it goes also above trying to tackle the inequalities that exist, or let's say the ethical concerns that exist within the sector, and try to resolve more of the implementation complexity across different sectors or different industries or different sectors. Yeah. So one of the rules there is that it tries to govern the development, the promotion and utilization of AI. Then for you to build any product, you have to make sure that you get a certification of self to ensure that the product that you are designing is safe to the environment. So different bodies like AI CAB, IEEE, AI Tech UK, they are designing different engines that will help to create a safe environment for our ecosystem. Now, this AI Act is not replacing the GDPR, the GDPR rule that is already in place, but this will, GDPR only concentrates on personal data, all right? But the AI Act will possess a broader scope and will extend it beyond personal data and cover different domains that we are seeing. So the next, I'm just summarizing what the law is all about. And the next one is that the existing consumers law still holds to its effect, but it's been modified that will fit in within the AI technology or AI product that you are trying to build. Then this is what is more going to bring more of digital divide, where the fine is, where they've imposed fine of any company or any individual who is found wanting, where there may be a monetary fine or a maximum of 6% of their global turnover. But now you could see that, well, I'll come to that conversation when we come to our discussion section. Then you now look at the operations that will exist. Now, this is not only for those guys like OpenAI, Google, and the likes of them that are the AI playmakers. This actually affects you as an individual who will be using the tool, because one, it's going to cut across those playmakers. It's going to cut across those playmakers, and one is going to cut across the providers of those AI systems. Now, if you are building an AI product, you are more like to be a provider of the AI system. But what about those big players who are making their who are making their APIs available for you to plug in and to build, or to import packages and the likes of them to build what you want to build? You see that the act primarily will place obligations on those people. Now, if obligations are placed on them, that's referring that once any AI system that they're developing or they are going to bring into market conforms to this rule, it becomes a challenge, because there's going to be a point where I develop a product and I put it there, but I can't control you on how you as an individual is going to use your tool at the long run. Now, the next set of people that this AI acts is the AI users. I think that's where everybody, majority of the people falls into. You that is in the AI, in the boot camp, listening online, and we that are using AI as using AI in our day-to-day activities, deploying, building models in different ways, like computer vision, natural language processing. I think this is where majority and the bulk of it is. So we still have our own role to play, or this act actually affects us. And the obligation extends to us as well, and which is defined as usuals or organizations that are using this AI system under any authority. It could be a local authority implementing, if let's say you want to implement a fraud detection scheme, or if you want to implement a notable scheme for HR or hiring systems, or estates management apps and the likes of them, depending on what you are using it for, you see that that act creates that opportunity, which you need to understand that you still need to use it responsibly. Now, the third set of people that this actually in fact are the importers and the distributors. You see, this act also cuts across those people who transports these products to different parts of the country, because we could see different organizations or these top AI product like Microsoft apps trying to see how Africans can get into it and improve on their learning. But one thing you need to understand within this is that they used a risk model approach in classifying different AI products that they have, or AI system that is being deployed. And the one is the approach is one, the unacceptable risks, or the kind of risks that are prohibited. Please, I would like you to pay attention to this. And this is where I have a great concern about. And we are going to still look at it from African perspective and how this affects us in Africa. We look at the high risk assessment, the limited risk assessment, and the minimal risk. So for this presentation, I'm going to focus on the unacceptable risk, or those kind of AI products that are prohibited. Now, and there are clauses towards it. One is any kind of system that you create that kind of creates a social scoring, or that kinds to manipulate people. But come to think of it, do you think somebody will create an AI system that will be centered for manipulating people? Yes and no, but majority of the people will say no, because if you are creating an AI product, it should be a product that will be safe, or that they called AI for good, that will create a safe environment, create impact in the social economic sector and in all spheres. But you can see that these AI manipulation systems are things that could come under unintended consequences. But again, you that created that system, or you that is using that system, or the importers of that, can actually come under the fine that may be imposed, or under the consequences that these AI acts will affect. Now, the question will be, how do you now identify, or how do you tailor your usage of these AI tools so that it won't be manipulative to the environment? Now let's look at the social scoring. You know, this is also being debated within the AI space, where one, depending on how you are gathering your data. So although in GDPR policy, one of the principles is that any data you gathered for a specific purpose cannot be reused, right? But in this regard, we could see that for different sectors that are building their portfolio, there is a tendency of social profiling in that regard. For example, if you want to, if some of the social media algorithms that we see on the internet are kind of creating a targeted advert for a certain individuals. A good example is the Cambridge Analytics that allegedly influenced some of the elections within the country. But you could see that those apps somehow were manipulated, but the people that voted were not placed under duress. But the intention of the manipulation was what actually derived that impact. Now, the question is, if we prohibit this system, what about the benefits of such systems gives to the environment, and how do we balance this? Now, the bone of contention is the facial recognition side of things, which we could also look at, or we could also classify it as biometric. And this is one of the controversies at the moment, whether whether it should be banned outrightly, because in that regard, they made an exception saying that it's only those who are in the within the law enforcement sector that can use it in order to curtail crime, prevent crime, and the likes of it. But now let's look at this. If you are banning real-time biometric, right, which kind of be used for surveillance and other instances, what about our phones, our mobile phones? For example, people that use iPhone, we use our fingerprints, we use our our faces to unlock our phones. Now, they created a concept within that sector that said it's only those, you need to take consent from people. You need to get their human consent before they can use it. So right now, if you don't know that Apple sort of monitors your activities, there is a setting in Apple iPhone where you can actually deactivate that setting. But if you're not informed about it, you could see that they can have access to your data. Now, what about those public places where you see CCTV cameras? Let's say, for example, you are entering into a mall and you are saying, oh, Smile, you're on camera, or this building is under camera. You could see that you are not giving that option to accept if you want to. I mean, you're not giving that option to say, oh, I don't want this camera to be here, or I want this camera to be here. Therefore, because you have need to get into the mall, to get into the shopping mall, to have access to it, so you are being placed under surveillance, you are being coerced in that regard. Then what happens in that regard? These are the things that we need to start thinking about, because it's coming to and believe me, it's going to even affect EU, more especially in UK, because in UK the ratio of cameras within UK is 1 to 14. So at every single point where you are in UK, 14 cameras are focusing on you. But now another caveat there is that you are not meant to use, I mean, those cameras are not meant to be used in real time. But come on, when you say real time, what do you mean? Is it as it's being captured? So, but when you capture those information, save it on the data, and at the same time, you use the information that is saved on the CCTV storage after some time. What happens? So we need to be careful how we set up some of our apps in building or capturing this, because some of these things are prohibited. Now, now I've already mentioned that the concept of informed decision is kind of odd, because some places your consent will not be sought after. Let's say you are entering into a concert. Let's say you are going into a concert, and in that concert there are CCTV cameras everywhere. You need to be there, even though you don't want to even though you don't want to be to be filmed, but you need to be there. So your consent is not needed in that regard. Now, these are the things that are bringing the controversy within the tech space. Now, we've talked about the manipulation, we've talked about the real-time biometric, we talked about the social scoring. And while I was reviewing one of the apps that one of us built in looking at estate management, I started seeing a lot of concerns that will arise in terms of profiling, because when these data are gathered within the apps that we are building within Microsoft, it creates that propensity or that opportunity or possibility of us being profiled. But again, how do we balance this, and how will this affect us within the digital sector? Now, think of some of those apps like Microsoft, or let's say the Open AI system, or the large language modeling, saying that they are not making those apps open at the moment. It becomes a close of what will happen to Africa. So right now, where you are sitting, you are trying to learn this to, we now need to start having a design thinking, that anything that you're going to bring out in the market will be among the AI products or AI players, and not just for the AI users, because they are the ones that are going to dictate the tune. If I don't want you to use my product, you are not going to use my product. And one of the breakthroughs that we've seen in the AI industry is as a result of some of this open source that people are using to brainstorm and to create diverse and different kinds of technology within the AI space. All right, we've talked about the unacceptable risks. Now, the second one is the high risk assessment. The educational sector, we have, of course, DSN is also an educational field or a digital field where they implement digital learning in different forms or shapes. Well, we have to look at it closely. If it comes down to, yes, you either be fined for your products that you are designing in the digital space, or you get what they call it, you get an assessment over the product that you want to design. You could see that not everybody can afford a lawyer, not everybody can afford to get through the assessment or certifications for your product. How will that affect Africa as a whole? So there is this propensity or the probability or the risk that the technology, the AI technology, instead of bridging this digital divide, at the same time expands this digital divide. We talked about limited risk, of course, which boils down to your system becoming transparent in different forms or shape. So you are not building a black box. So anything you are building, there should be explainability side of things within it, that even people that uses such technology can also benefit from it. Now, I don't know why I'm now within even the justice, the immigration, the law, the employment. Of course, these things has been raised, and I think in one of the sections within DSN during the monthly DSN programs that looked at responsible AI, explainable AI, how AI systems and algorithms can be responsible. So while you are designing your model, building your model on Google Colab or Jupyter Notebook, how is your model covering and creating an all-inclusive system that will not create a digital divide more? And this is the mindset that you need to carry in your day-to-day. Now, let's look at some of the essential requirements for high risk, because majority of the system that will be developed or majority of the AI products are going to fall under high risk system. I just gave you a few examples: the educational sector, the employment sector, the justice sector, the immigration sector, the law sector. These are few examples from the excerpt of the AI regulation. But now let's look at some of the essential requirements. You have to conduct a conformity assessment before placing such products in the market. Then, do you think that with this kind of rule, you can actually come over to Europe to develop that product and come back to Africa in that regard, bearing in mind that the lab or the institution where you are going to develop your AI product in Europe, they still have a responsibility over the AI system that you are trying to design. If you are to provide a conformity assessment test, then the next one is to ensure that the risk management system and the documentation caters for all the risks that will come out from it. In fact, this is even hard to do because you may want to create a system that looks into a certain or that solves a particular problem, whereas someone else somewhere will go and use that same system you create to do something different. So how do you try to manage this risk associated with it? One of the things this will create is to make people to be reluctant in order to create innovations in the world. And if that happens, how much more will it impact us? Because we are the ones feeding or trying to use some of the technology that is being developed in different parts of the world and building our own system that will conform to our environment. And the next question that we need to discuss is one: what happens when open AI becomes a closed AI? What happens when they say they're not going to make their APIs, they're not going to make their models open again, and those open sources and the likes of them? What happens? You sitting here, can you derive your own algorithm that solves the problem? Can you derive your own algorithm? And these are the mindset that we need to start carrying in building if we want to drive Africa, because we are coming to that point. We are coming to that point where the playmakers will determine the tune and how it's being used in the market. How do you then tackle the unintended consequences of AI products? And I've emphasized on this so much because you are designing a product that solves this, whereas that product can do this, which you did not oversee, even if you've passed through the certifications that have been impacted in it. Now, as an individual within Africa, within the product that you are solving, how will this assist? For example, there is this app that was banned recently. Now, you know that it's an AI app in natural language processing where it interprets a certain dialect. I'm not going to call the dialect. It was developed in Europe. Now you could see that some words in one language means something in another language. True or false? I just wish I'm there so I can be seeing people. You see that some words in another language mean something in another language, and most often it may be those words which means good thing in a language may mean a negative thing in another language. Now, what this set of people did was to get the product, tune it in order to give a wrong information when it's being translated. So when you use it as an interpreter, you are saying, oh, AI is good. Now the language will be saying AI is bad. Now, these people, I don't know what was the intention behind it, but again, who is going to be held accountable? Because the products they used in designing that was from a company that designed the product in order to bridge the digital divide that exists between language, so as everyone to understand and learn in different languages. So, how do you then handle that, those unintended consequences? Now, consider the fine that will be imposed. Do you think that is going to be a cross fertilization of ideas and funding within the ecosystem, or the AI ecosystem, when some of these things are being put in place, when you consider the stakeholders, consider their own responsibility that they own over the product that you are designing there, that will be translated into another country in that regard. And you could see that even some of these top players, if they want to import an AI product into another country, they have to also put on a thinking cap that may give them restlessness, and they may end up not even want to deploy such in another country, which will benefit you and I. Then we need to step up and become that. So the next one we need to look at is, if we look at the AI tool, you can see that the design of AI tool, of its accessibility, is a challenge. Now, what unfolds, because with this AI law, it's also going to deepen the challenge that is already existing in that regard. And the summary of this is, in summary, the regulation is good. Don't get me wrong, the regulation is good, but we need to start thinking how these regulations are going to help to build, to bridge that digital divide that is already existing. Because if Dr. Bayo did not extend this platform to us, I'm not sure where I will be by now. I'm not sure I'll be where I am at the moment. But he extended the platform to people like me, to you that is listening to me, and I benefited from it, and I'm where I am at the moment. Now, this AI regulation, it's a good thing and tries to create openness, try to create a simple transfer. But you see that there is going to be that restriction within the transfer of funds or data across board, which is going to be a problem. How do we then tackle it sitting where we are at the moment? Now, the DSN vision is robust. All right, and it creates that participation within Africa to use AI and to provide AI services across all board. But the dynamics is changing, and it's getting to that point that there's going to be I call it a virtual segregation and bias that will be phenomenal. You may have seen the concept that called the new Jim code. Then in summary, we need to master these tools and bring these benefits to our local context. That's one of the ways that which we need to start building the digital divide that AI regulation and AI is gradually building. We've already looked at the bright side of things. We've looked at the AI regulations and how this will be breached. And we are currently saying that while we are learning these tools, we need to also create that tool to be beneficial in our local context, not just developing the tools being used in the cities or in the urban areas, but likewise in the rural areas. I'll wait for feedbacks and discussions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you,
if you
Mr. Steve, Sebastian Obeta. Thanks for that wonderful and insightful section. So, if we have any question, please, on the group chat. I think we have none, but if we have any question on site, please, can we signify so we can arrange the question then send to Mr. Sebastian Obeta so we can have. Do you have any hand raised? No. So no question. No question. We can't find any question. Okay. Yeah, we have a question here. The GDPR makes provision for data privacy. Are you saying there are loopholes that can be exploited in data breaches? Mr. Sebastian Obeta.
The answer is typical yes. There are loopholes. I mean, there have been GDPR policy before Cambridge Analytica came into existence. All right. So I don't need to speak further on this. Yes, there are loopholes into it because somehow data are being repurposed. And in that regard, you could see that that is against the GDPR policy. Now, okay, as at last year, Facebook was also fined for data breach. What do you call that? Even them sitting within Europe and with the strong GDPR rules that I put in place, every year they are being fined. Not every year per se, but as last year they were fined heavily. So yes, there are loopholes within that. But the concern here is how will that affect Africa and the AI ecosystem within Africa at the long run? Because the AI regulation is solidifying, those GDPR policies, which I think, first of all, we need to understand how AI is being used before the regulation comes into existence, because many people will not have access to the AI technology at the long run. So the answer is yes to the question. There are loopholes that can be exploited for data breaches, which companies are being fined for it. With the with the GDPR policy that is still in place, companies are being fined for breaching GDPR rules. So it shows that that's a loophole.
All right. All right. All right. So, do you still have any other question here? Do you have any questions for Mr. Sebastian Obeta? Yeah. Please pop it online. Please kindly drop your question here on the chat box.
I think there's a question. I think there's a thought there.
Yeah, yeah. Rather than penalize the creator of technology, why not penalize those that we populate it? That's the question here on the chat box.
Okay. Yeah. So I want everyone listening to start thinking within this context based on what I'm about to say now. You see, just think, for example, let's say you are a musician, and there is something that is currently ongoing at the moment, and you could have, I don't want to say this one, but you can bring different, if you have a special artist, you can bring all of his music, plug it in an AI system, and generate your own music, because AI will create that generative content, right? Now, you are there, you created that system which gives you that insight to generate your own music, whereas you got that information, you got that insight, or the music that you are maybe the music is not a good thing, but let me just use it. So what they are doing now is different artists, they will just go and bring their albums, plug it in an AI system, and generate a new lyrics or generate a new sounds, as the case may be, to create that insight. Are you going to penalize, or why should you penalize the person that used it for a creative purpose? Because I see it as a creativity. You may have a different opinions on that. I see it as a creativity. Now, okay, if you then penalize that person that created the technology, and the person said, okay, I'm not going to release this large language model to the masses. Do you think you'll be talking about ChatGPT or talking about all those systems that people are being created in Africa or created in different parts of the world, plugging the APIs to create that? Do you think that will happen? So they need to place a balance where I should be responsible for what I create, but I shouldn't be responsible for you that is using it to do what you want to use it to do. So I strongly believe in that thought, where we need to penalize those that repurpose it. But at the same time, if you are to penalize them, that's also a creativity on the own part. Now, what if the person that owns the music is not kind of AI enabled, or doesn't know how to create those systems to regenerate a new songs within that ecosystem? What happens in that regard? So it's not a one-way system, but it's something that needs to be looked into. And I don't think that the risk model that they've implemented will be enough to address some of these challenges, because one of these can fall under this, another can fall under another risk assessment. That's my thought on it. I would like to hear your own opinion on that as well. because it's an ongoing conversation.
All right. The Subnotator is still asking a further question on that. He said, I believe we can agree based on your explanation, sir, that the loopholes are wrong, but hasn't those loopholes allow those repurposed data serve the people better than have a better understanding of humans? So the data that has been fed into AIs haven't been largely used from repurposed data. So I don't know.
You see, only the top players can tell us how. Only the top players, that's the open AI, those in charge of bad GPT algorithms, can tell us if actually those algorithms they have that self-learning ability. Because we type questions, we use the prompt engineering tags to ask questions. Is there a possibility that those algorithms are learning from what you are typing there? If it is true that they are learning from what you are imputing there, then it means that the data you are providing is being repurposed. Because if it's being repurposed, someone asked, okay, let me demonstrate it now. Let's say I asked ChatGPT, what is the meaning of DSN, data science network? Sorry, I mean, I asked ChatGPT, what is DSN? Oh, sorry, I've been trained for so I don't know what DSN is. That normal response we do get from ChatGPT. Then you now tell ChatGPT, the DSN means data science network. All right. Then next time, now the question is the GPT algorithm self-learning? Will it pick that information and learn? It then means that that information that you are being fed, if someone else now search with DSN or search with GPT, what is DSN? It comes out that data science network. The information was fed into it, but it's being repurposed to answer another person's question. This is a literal meaning, but not directly important, and I mean not directly related to that conversation. But the thought will now be, how do we create that balance within that system where data can be largely repurposed, but for good that will help us to understand human? Because that is the breakthrough that we are seeing. So I agree with you, but I'll still want to know your thoughts on that.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Sebastian Obeta, for this quite impactful and insightful section. I think we have a question. Okay, so I guess boys are those who will determine the good and bad or bad of AI. So thank you, Mr. Sebastian Obeta, for this wonderful section. I think we have no question, and if there are any further question, we gather the question then send to you via your email, sir. Thank you so much, and we really appreciate you. Thanks. Yeah, can we see the question around here? Can we get